the worst moments in this human life that I've had, this lifetime, for me, have been around patriarchy. My worst failings on this earth
Same.
has been about how I've shown up as a man, the things I carry most shame on
Absolutely.
and have had to heal the most from. And so I remember like trying to heal from like the worst one of those and basically making that move, taking it and trying to just put it away.
Yeah.
Just becoming Mr. Spiritual. You know what I mean? You just become Mr. Spiritual and you like taking your body out of the picture.
Yes.
And
Yep.
and it is the jury is still out, but I can see how that quarantine was probably very, very, very helpful, right?
Yeah.
I can also see how it went too far. And then I made actually major life defining choices
Yeah.
while ignoring a part of myself, right?
Absolutely.
And that can be a problem.
Yes.
Right, that will be a problem, and so I would love to talk a little bit about that. What was that like for you? What did you learn? What have you learned now retrospectively about that process of putting yourself, putting that masculine part away in order to?
I think that goes back to the conversation of self-flagellation versus self-introspection. What I learned was that I was exhibiting behavior that was harmful to the people I love. I was a yeller. I was a screamer. I'm a big body, and this was a behavior that scared my partner and my children. Like, it's not a behavior that's healthy, safe, and shouldn't be a consistent behavior. So I did quarantine that. I also felt that there was a moment of energy. It's interesting because I think returning to it was like, how do I release this? Sometimes it was meditation, sometimes it was running, sometimes it was performing. When I'm rhyming, it'll come through on my energy. I'll find a level where I can release it. Finding places to release these energies and also to be in place in a conversation with it rather than in... My thing is that, I keep making, I think, something, I don't want this to be this grievance that this is brought into the conversation, because I don't think masculinity always goes to violence. I know that it doesn't.
Yeah.
I don't think masculinity always goes to these kind of attempts, but I think what happens is that for many of us, it does. And because it does, that's usually a peak spot. And then men either decide, oh, this is who I am and this is what I tolerate about myself, or I have to do something about this. And if you decide to do something about that, the first process is probably to back that shit up. Right? Put it in the lock drawer and try to figure that out. Because you can't in that moment be a volcano, explosive. You can't be a landmine for the people in your life if you feel like this is something that I don't have under control.
Right.
I think that process of walking from there, opening the lockbox, sitting with it, wow, what's really making me this way? What are some of the roots of this? Where did I pick this up? How does me changing this make me better and the people I love better? How do I change? How do I handle intergenerational traumas that are showing up? How do I confront them? Do I have to cry? Do I have to figure out where my spirituality lies here?
Right.
Do I have to figure out what it looks like for me to be self-compassionate? I used to do this thing, and I was very aware of it. When I made a mistake, I would do the self-flagellation thing. I'm a failure, and these things would play up in my mind about not being adequate as a human being. But how that would show up, if you were my roommate, right, and you'd walk by me in the living room, I'd just be sitting there on the couch like this, very pensive, very solemn. I'd be sitting there. It wasn't even very self-destructive. You wouldn't see it. So you'd be like, hey, man, what are you going to do for dinner? I'm like, oh, no, I'm good. Maybe you have dinner. Maybe you go out to the movies, and you come back, and I'm still sitting there, right? And you're like, hey, you good? I'm good. And let me tell you what's happening in those last 4 hours, right? You ain't shit. You're not worthy. You're a terrible human being for 4 hours, right? So now my spiritual corpse is on the floor in front of me, and I'm spending 3 to 4 hours just picking that up. Picking up the corpse. Hey, let's go get a shower. Let's eat. Let's say some self-affirmations in front of the mirror. And what I realized after a while, because this had to happen, it was a part of the process, is that you can cut the middleman. You have to cut the middleman. You don't have to beat the shit out of yourself.
Right,
you have to stop that part, because that part helps no one involved.
Right. That's beautiful.
And so I would have those moments of reflection where then I would start, actually with your help. I would be able to hear what was triggering, where the words would come in, where the voices were coming in, And I would have to learn a process. We went through that learning together of learning a process of being like, oh, they're coming in. The voices of self-hate, the voices that are violent in my head, the voices that are telling me that I'm not worthy of love and change, that I'm not worthy, that I can't transform, that this is just who I am. Those voices are now being caught at the door. When you catch those at the door, this isn't you just meditation, awareness, good peoples in the world that help you to develop your skill set. When you start to catch that, your muscle, right? Your spiritual, mental, emotional muscle goes, oh, where's that coming from? And usually in those places and spaces, you can either decide to do work and visit, or guess what happens to the person that hasn't beat themselves up for 4 hours? They're in a better place to be able to reflect and self-evaluate, right? There's a James Baldwin quote, and it says, it's easier to cry. Sometimes it's easier to cry than to change. And I cry a lot, and I love crying. So it's not like an indictment on crying. It's just that sometimes people are like, well, see, I'm such a bad person, I'm this and that, and then they go back to doing the same thing, rather than spending those 4 hours being like, what's the one thing I can start practicing to embody this in a way that feels whole and safe? And I think that's a key word for people. And I know safety is such a strange word, because comfort and discomfort, but just safe from your violence.